Hello, we hope you are well. We are ultra excited about this particular training presentation. The title of today's presentation is The Stars Have Aligned. This training presentation is a guide about volleyball alignments and rotations. We're taking this from a perspective of a beginner, but we hope that people of all levels gain valuable insight and education from this particular training presentation. Here's today's agenda. What are they? We're going to talk about what exactly are alignments and rotations. We'll dive into opposites and what are opposites. We'll dive into the geometry of alignments. We'll implement some strategies in our strategy session, and we'll put all our education and knowledge into practice. So let's get started. What are they? Alignments are the actual formations of the players on the court for each team. This consists of the players being lined up in their positions. Rotations are the numerical references we use for each team based on the location and position of the setter, as we have circled here. So rotations will be numbers 1 through 6, and we'll dive into that shortly. Alignments are the actual physical formations of the players on the volleyball court. In this particular image, we learned that based on the location of our setter, the team in blue is in rotation 5. The image is just a representation of the alignments of the teams on the floor. So the first place that we can gather information and education into alignments and rotations actually come from our lineup sheets. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. In this example, we have Team Walker. They'll be serving to start set 1 and receiving to start set 2. Number 1 for Team Walker will be our first setter for the first 2 sets. Number 1 also just happens to be the setter for Team Walker. Now, while this doesn't occur all the time, this is something that may occur very frequently with a lot of teams, where your setter or your primary setter will usually be the first server. So as we know from a lineup sheet, the Roman numerals represent the positions of the players on the floor. The location of all the players currently on the floor are what makes up a team's alignment. An important note to remember about lineup sheets that are graphical with geometric shapes, be it squares or circles, is that the first server is in position 1 when the team is serving. First server is in position 2 when the team is receiving. And that is a very important distinction that we need to make sure we remember. Again, these are example lineup sheets for Team Walker on the actual roster sheet. Some teams will actually combine the roster and the lineup sheet together as seen here. Again, player number 1 will be our first setter for the first 2 sets, and player number 1 happens to be the setter for Team Walker. We know that the Roman numerals represent the players' positions on the floor. And the location of all the players currently on the floor makes up the team's alignment. The difference between this particular lineup sheet and the one we viewed previously is that the first server will always be in position 1, regardless if the team is serving or receiving. Now let's dive into rotations. This table represents rotations. Remember that a rotation is a team's numerical representation of the setter's position and location. So note that in rotations 1 through 3, our setter is always back row. Note that in rotations 4 through 6, if our setter is still on the floor, then our setter is always front row. Now, as you can see, we list the setter's position according to the lineup sheet. Based on the setter's position, that will indicate what the team's rotation currently is and what their setter's status is, whether he or she is a back row player or front row player. This is a very good mnemonic device for you as officials to use, because if you're keeping track of your setter, you know the team's rotation, then obviously you know what your setter status should be. You will obviously know where her or his or her position currently should be. This will aid greatly in your knowledge of alignments and rotations. We can see that in rotation 1, our setter should be right back, meaning that she should be the server, and when they lose their turn server, she will continue to be the right back. In rotation 2, our setter will be middle back. In rotation 3, our setter will be left back. If the setter remains on the floor, then in rotation 4, the setter will be left front. Rotation 5, the setter will be middle front. And in rotation 6, our setter will be the right front. Now let's dive into opposites. When you think of opposites, you think of things that are opposite. You think of things such as black, white. You think of things such as day, night. Those things are clearly opposites. You also think of things such as up, down, left, right, north, south, west, east. Those things are opposites. So in volleyball, opposites are pairs of volleyball players who do not and will not ever play in the same row in a set. This image does a very good job of detailing who will be opposites on our volleyball court. And if you think about it from a directional or geometric perspective, you can see this clear who our opposites are. From our lineup sheet of Team Walker, notice that 1 and 4 are opposites. So if 4, who is our left front, 1, who is our right back, they're opposites. Notice that our 2 middles are opposites. For Team Walker, that's 3 and 6. So our middle back and our middle front are opposites. Now we have 2 and 5. 2 is our right front. 5 is our left back. Those are opposites. We also have Team Barnes on our right. We have 11 and 14 who are opposites. 13 and 16 that are opposites. 12 and 15 that are opposites. We're going to learn later in this presentation how opposites can aid our education and understanding of alignments and rotations. Now let's talk about the geometry of alignments. To understand the geometry of alignments, we're going to use Team Walker again. Remember, Team Walker's setter is player number 1. And in the first set, player number 1, who is our setter, is also our server. So important note when a team is serving. If the team is serving, then the server, in this case number 1, does not factor into the alignment unless the server is incorrect. The basic alignment rules can be thought of in 2 directional ways, if you will. I always like to think of it as left and north, and you'll see why shortly. The actual rules will make reference to the left sideline and will make use of the center line. I like to just think of it as the left sideline and the net. It's easier to think of the net than it is the center line for most people. So basically, we have two schools of alignment here. We have the alignment with respect to the left sideline. We have alignment with respect to the net or the center line. So it's pretty simple. 4, who is our left front, must be the closest person to the left sideline than any of his neighboring front row players. Therefore, 4 must be closer to the left sideline than 3, who must be closer to the left sideline than 2. And of course, 4 must be closer to the left sideline than 2. The same applies for our back row players, 5, 6, and 1. 5, who is our left back, must be the closest back row player to the left sideline. And 5 must be closer than 6, and 6 must be closer than 1. Now, with regards to the net, the relationship of the net with respect to alignments involves front row, back row players, which means each of our front row players must be closer to the net than their corresponding back row players. So 4, who is our left front, must be closer to the net than 5, who is the left back. 3, who is our middle front, must be closer to the net than 6, who is our middle back. 2, who is our right front, must be closer to the net than 1, who is our right back. You notice what we don't see here? We don't see here in the net center alignment rules where back row player, say 5, cannot be closer to the net than 3 or 2. Or say that 6, who is our middle back, cannot be closer to the net than 4 or 2. Or 1, who is our right back, cannot be closer to the net than 4 or 3. The net center line alignment rules are very specific. It only says that our front row player must be closer to the net than their corresponding back row player, meaning that back row players can be closer to the net than front row players if they're not their corresponding player. And we'll get into that as we dive deeper into the presentation. So you're asking yourself, this is a lot of information. Why is it really important? Okay. Say that one of our back row players was closer to the net than their corresponding front row player prior to service contact. Let's say that 1 was closer to the net than 2. If that was the case, that would actually make number 1 the right front instead of 2. It would make 2 the right back. But we know that 2 is currently the right front. Or say that 6 was closer to the net than 3 prior to service contact. That would make 6 the middle front instead of 3, even though we know 3 is the middle front. Or say that 5 was closer to the net than 4. That would make 5 the left front instead of 4, even though 4 is the legal left front. Basically, in each of these scenarios, our back row player would actually be considered the front row player in that alignment prior to service contact. And if service contact were made where one of those scenarios happened, this would be illegal. You still not convinced? I got more for you. So say that one of our front row players was closer to the left sideline than their neighboring front row player prior to service contact. Let's just say that 2 was closer to the left sideline than 3. That would make 2 the middle front instead of 3. And if this were to happen, then 3 would become the right front. Let's say that 3 was closer to the left sideline than 4. then that would make 3 the left front instead of 4. And in that scenario, it would make 4 the middle front. Or let's say that 2 is closer to the left sideline than 4. So we got a double whammy here if that were to happen. That would make 2 the left front instead of 4, and that would make 4 the middle front and 3 the right front. In each of those scenarios, the offending front row player would actually be in that position. And in all those scenarios, if service contact were to occur, this would be illegal. Now that we have a grasp on what makes alignments legal and illegal, now that we have a grasp on what opposites are, and now that we have some understanding of rotations, let's say we could implement some simple strategies that will help us. Now, here's a note. So this is a match of one of my friends and colleagues, and I watched this entire match, including the warm-ups. So I can tell you out of the gate that the starting setters for both teams happens to be a number 8. So the first tip, watch your players in warm-ups. Find your setters and liberos. Knowing who they are is a great aid in your understanding of alignments and rotations. Do a very thorough lineup check at the start of each set. If you have done the above tip, you should know who your setter is and who your libero is. That's 2 people down you don't have to worry about. If you know who your setter is, then you will know the team's rotation before the set even starts, and you will know your setter status as well. If your libero comes in prior to the start of the set, observe who the libero is replacing. And one thing about liberos that you will also know is they have to be back row players. So you can have this wealth of knowledge about a team's alignment and rotation right out of the gate before you beckon for the first serve of a set or a match. Now you're going to see this appear on the next few slides, but I'm going to only say it one time. Part of your training and education to become better with alignments and rotations require one thing if you do nothing else. Do a scan of both teams after each and every rally. It'll keep you engaged and you can gather information required for your knowledge of alignments and rotations. Each and every rally. This includes the first referee and the second referee. Now the tip, number 2, is actually the following. It is a tip based on this condition, which will happen for most teams. If the liberos play all 3 back row positions and their team wins the rally after being the receiving team, where the libero is the left back, the libero must either leave the set for one completed rally or go back to serve. And her replacement must be the left front. So there you have a tip about alignments already. Libero is left back, her team is receiving, they win the rally. The libero is either going to go serve or leave the set for a completed rally. The player that is coming back into the contest has to be the left front. Knowledge for you. In this video, hopefully you got the chance to view it. The team in blue wins the rally. The libero will leave the set for at least one completed rally. Number 7 goes to serve, and number 16 will come into the match. Number 16 comes into the match must be the left front prior to service contact. Same tip again, but different scenario. Again, if our libero plays all 3 back row positions, or at least is the left back when a receiving team wins the rally, the libero must either leave the set for a completed rally or go back to serve, and her replacement must be the left front. In this particular video, team in blue wins the rally after being the receiving team. Time number 16 leads the set, and the libero goes back to serve. Number 7 comes into the set, and as we know, the replacement that comes back into the set must be the left front if our libero has served her time at left back. We're doing a good job of keeping up our setter, and we know one or both of the following things. Team is in one of the following rotations, 1, 2, or 3, and the setter is a back row player. Then we know right out the gate that both of these conditions really will have to be met. If a team is in one of those rotations, and we know the rotation, or we know that our setter for a fact is a back row player, then the team has to be in rotation 1, 2, or 3. But what it helps us know is that our setter cannot be the closest player to the net, aka center line, prior to service contact. The team in blue lost service where the setter was the server. Thus, she's the right back. As a result, her team must be in rotation 1. Therefore, she cannot be the closest player to the net prior to service contact. And as we learn from rotations, when a team is in rotation 1, our setter is the right back. So therefore, prior to the serve being contacted, our right back setter cannot be closer to the net than the right front. Same tip. Now we're looking at a different rotation. So this time we're looking at rotation 2, where our setter is the middle back. And if we know that our team is in rotation 2, or we know that our setter is a back row player and we know she's middle back, we know that she can't be the closest player to the net prior to service contact. And we see in this image, our setter is a couple of steps off the net and a couple of steps away from the center line. And we have a player who will turn out to be our middle front, who is right on the net and right on the center line. This video is just an illustration of the prior slide with the image, showing that our setter is not the closest person to the net until the ball was contacted for serve. This video is just an illustration of the same tip.
Right back, girls, right back.
And our setter is left back, and her team is in rotation 3. We notice that there is a player who is the left front, who is closer to the net and center line than our setter prior to the ball being contacted for serve. This fourth tip comes out one of my matches. Watch number 10 for the team on our left. She's our back row setter. Where she goes. Now we're going to notice that number 10 for the team on our left is a back row setter. She's a left back and her team is in rotation 3. Our tip is that we have a glitch on the status of our setter we can regain it during the rally. We'll see that when her team is playing defense, she's going to move or retreat to the right side of the playing court near the right sideline and the attack line. This is a staple for almost all volleyball teams, where a back row setter, when their team is playing defense, you're going to see them near the right sideline and attack line on their side of the playing court. Same tip, but this time we're watching number 9 for the team on the right. He's our back row setter and happens to be the server on this play. See how she goes to the right sideline near the attack line? That's going to happen pretty often in most matches. We hope that you have gained some valuable insight about rotations and alignments and have started to figure some things out with the strategies that we've given you. Now let's put all of this knowledge into practice. Now, because I've watched the match that we are going to look at, I'm going to do all the hard legwork for you. So I'm giving you the starting lineup of the team that we're going to look at. We're only going to look at one of these teams, which will be the team in blue. You see in the image, I've circled number 15, was in position 3 to start the set. She's going to be our setter. She's going to play all the positions. She's never going to come out. Since our setter is the middle front in position 3, you know from earlier that our team will start the set in rotation 5. I'm also going to let you know that 11 and 5 will sub for each other during the set. 4 and 10 will sub for each other in the set. And there's going to be something special that happens with those two pairs of subs. And we'll see that as we go further in the presentation. Our libero is going to be number 1. She's going to be in the light blue jersey. She's going to serve when number 7 comes into the contest. And she's going to go out when number 16 comes in. To start the set, our libero is going to go in for number 7. So our libero is going to start the set at left back. So if we have been paying attention, we understand that once our team in blue becomes the receiving team and they win the rally, our libero is going to have a decision to make. She's going to either have to leave the contest or she's going to go to serve. Let's see all of this in action. We also know from earlier we learned about opposites. We learned that our left front and our right back are opposites. We learned that our two middles, middle back and middle front, are opposites. We learned that our right front and our left back are opposites. So in this scenario, 12 and 10 are opposites. Our setter, number 15 and 5, are opposites. And 7 and 16 are opposites. And here's the kicker with 7 and 16. Because our libero goes in for 7, we know that our libero is going to be involved with them as being opposites. So this pair actually is going to become a trio. And here's where your knowledge serves you well. You know your libero can't be a front row player, so it's highly unlikely that 7 and 16 are going to be in the match at the same time very often, if even at all. Now, this is just an image from the information in our prior slide. Hopefully you can see some of the numbers clearly in this particular image. Our setter, number 15, is the closest person to the net. He's our middle back. our opposite is 5. Our libero and 16 are opposites. 12 and 10 are opposites. Now our team in blue started the set in rotation 5. So let's start in rotation 5. Now our team in blue began the match by serving. Remember, the server does not factor into the alignment since the server is not in bounds prior to service contact. But we can have an illegal alignment because of the server if our server happened to be the wrong server. Number 15 is our middle front. That's our team is in rotation 5. So the question is, prior to service contact, and our question will be for every rotation and every rally, are they legally aligned? So the order of the front row to start the match. And when we do our orders, we're not going to do our orders based on the lineup sheet where we're going counterclockwise. We're just going to take the order from left to right. So our order was 12, 15, 16. We see in this image that 12 is the closest front row player to the left sideline. 15 is the next closest, and 16 is the furthest away from the left sideline. So from a left sideline perspective, we're good on our front row. The order of our back row to start the match is 7, 5, 10. Libero came in for 7. She's the closest person, back row player to the left sideline. 5 is the next closest. Now, even though in this image, 10 is in between the two of them, remember, because 10 is our server, geometrically, she does not factor in the back row alignment with respect to the left sideline. She would only factor in if she was the wrong server. And because none of our back row players are closer to the net than their corresponding players, and everyone is aligned legally based on the left sideline, our team is legally aligned. Throughout the rest of the presentation, we're going to circle our setter. Because remember, the key in our understanding of alignments and rotations is that we're scanning after each rally is completed and we're noting where our setter is located. You know, our setter is currently middle front, therefore our team is in rotation 5. Order of the front row is 12, 15, 16. And once again, our front row players are legally aligned with respect to the left sideline, where 12 is the closest front row player to the left sideline, 15 is the next closest, and 16 is the furthest away. Very clear and obvious. Let's look at the back row with respect to the left sideline. Our libero, 5 and 10. Libero is the closest person to the left sideline of our back row players. You can see that 5 is next to her, and 10 is the furthest away from the left sideline. And we can see that none of our back row players are closer to the net than the front row players. Once again, we have a legal alignment. So far, so good. Let's look at rotation 6. Our team in blue is serving. Remember, the server doesn't factor into alignment. The server's not in bounds prior to service contact. We can have an illegal alignment because of a server only if our server is the wrong server. Our setter is the right front. That's our team is in rotation 6. Now remember, in the prior rotation, our libero was the left back. So in rotation 6, she's either going to go serve or leave the court for at least one completed rally. In this case, our libero goes back to serve. Number 16 leaves the court. Number 7 returns to the court. Are they legally aligned? Let's look at rotation 1. The very first thing you should know about a team in rotation 1 is that the setter is the server. And if the setter is the server, our setter is right back. Now, once again, let's look at an alignment with respect to the left sideline. Our front row, 11, 7, 12. 11 is the closest person to the left sideline, followed by 7, and 12 is the furthest away. We're good with our front row players with respect to the left sideline. Our back row order is 10, our libero, and our setter. The setter is serving, so she doesn't factor in here. And because she's the right server, she definitely doesn't factor in here. 10 is the closest back row player to the left sideline, and the libero is the next closest. We have a legal alignment for rotation 1. Let's look at our team in blue rotation 1 receiving. Order of our front row is still 11, 7, 12. 11 is the closest front row player to the left sideline. We can see that. 7, who's a couple of steps in front of her, is the next closest person to the left sideline. 12, who is next to our setter, is the furthest away from the left sideline of the front row players. We're good with our front row with respect to the left sideline. The order of the back row is 10, libero, and 15 our setter. 10 is obviously the closest back row player to the left sideline. The libero is the next closest. And certainly our setter is the furthest person away from the left sideline, the back row players, as she is nearer the first referee side of the court. And none of our back row players are closer to the net than their corresponding front row players. Let's take a look at this. Our setter is right back. Number 12, who she's next to, is right front. Now notice, even though they are very close to one another, that number 12 is about a half a step to 1.5 steps closer to the net than our setter. And that is their relationship with regards to the net center line of corresponding players. Thus, our team is still legally aligned. Let's look at rotation 2. Now, if rotation 1 has our setter in right back, then rotation 2 probably should have our setter in middle back. We have a substitution in rotation 2. 4 will sub in for 10. And similar to a relationship we had earlier with a substitution, we have a player that's only playing the front row and a player that's only playing the back row. 4 is only going to play the front row. 10 is only going to play the back row. That just happens to be a particular pattern of this team. But it helps to start recognizing patterns for teams. That can only help you when looking at alignments and rotations. We know in rotation 2, our setter is the middle back. And in this particular play in rotation, 12 is our server. Are they legally aligned? So our front row order in rotation 2 is 4, who just came into the match, 11, 7. 4 is obviously the closest front row player, as we can see in the image. 11 is the next closest player. And 7, I'm going to throw a kick at you, who is the libero's opposite, is the furthest away of the front row players with respect to the left sideline. We're good with our front row players and the left sideline. Our back row order is the libero, 15 our setter, and 12 who is serving. 12 doesn't factor in because she's the correct server during the time which they are serving. Our libero is the closest back row player to the sideline, and 15 is the next closest player. And it's obvious that none of our back row players are closer to the net than their corresponding front row players, meaning our libero is not closer to the net than 4, and our setter, number 15, is not closer to the net than 11 prior to service contact. We have a legal alignment by our team in blue. Rotation 2 receiving. Remember, in rotation 2, our setter, circled in blue, is our middle back. 4, 11, 7 is our order of our front row in rotation 2. 4, who is near the bottom left of our image, is the closest front row player to the left sideline. 11, who has her hand on her hips, is the closest person to the net and is the next closest person, front row player, to the sideline, left sideline. 7, who is near the first referee, is the furthest away from the left sideline of the front row players. We're good with front row players. Back row order. Our libero in light blue, our setter, number 15, and number 12. They almost form a letter V, if you will. Our libero is obviously the closest back row player to the left sideline. Number 15 is the next closest to the left sideline of the back row players, and 12 is the furthest away. So we're good with our back row players as far as the left sideline. Now let's take a look at the relationship between our front and back row players with respect to the net. Now, 4 is our left front. Our libero is our left back. Both look like they are about the same distance from the net. Sometimes we call this an overlap. Now, by the letter of the law, an overlap is illegal. Okay? What we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we understand and recognize positions and our teams legally aligned according to positions. I know my libero is a back row player. I know she can't be a front row player. I also know from this image is that my libero, even though they may be alongside each other with respect to being the closest players to the net, that my libero is not closer to the net than number 4, who is our left front. Therefore, we're good there. If I really wanted to be nitpicky there, I would just give my libero a little verbal nudge to back up a couple of steps. Don't be that gotcha official. Now let's look at number 11, our middle front, and our setter, our middle back. It's clear that our middle front 11 is closer to the net than our middle back, who is our setter. We're good there. Number 7, who is our right front, and number 12, who is our right back. It's clear that 7 is closer to the net than 12. So none of our back row players are closer to the net than the corresponding front row players. Now, because we're not going to get nitpicky with number 4, our left front, and our libero, our left back, our team is legally aligned. Now, in our last image, rotation 2 looked a little different as far as where number 11 was located. But the alignment, as far as being legal, is still legal. All number 11 did was move over toward the right side of the court. She is still in front of the setter, who is her corresponding middle, and she is still closer to the left sideline than number 7. This particular image we're looking at is a more common rotation 2 that you usually will see from most teams. And in this image, they are legally aligned. Let's take a look at rotation 3. What do you know about rotation 3? What do you know about your setter in rotation 3? She should be a back row player, and she should be the left back. In this play, we see that our libero, who was the left back in the prior rotation, leaves the court. Number 16 comes back into the set, and number 7 will go to serve. Is our team legally aligned? Our front row order in rotation 3 is 16, 4, 11. 16 is the closest front row player to the left sideline. 4 is the next closest. 11 is the furthest away of the front row players. We're good with our front row players with respect to the left sideline. Our back row order in rotation 3 is our setter, number 15, 12, and 7. 7 doesn't factor in here because she's our correct server. 15, our setter, is the closest back row player to the left sideline. 12 is the next closest. If you watch the video, you saw that number 7, our server, serves to the left of our setter. But again, she does not factor into this because she is the correct server. Our team in rotation 3 for serving is legally aligned. On the loss of service, where are we in this? Replaces number 7, who has just finished serving. Our libero is our right back. It should be obvious because she just replaced the server. Setter in rotation 3 is the left back. Therefore, our team is in rotation 3. Question is, prior to service contact, is the team legally aligned? Let's look at rotation 3 receiving. We know that our setter, number 15 circle, has to be the left back in rotation 3. Our front row order is 16, 4, 11. 16 is obviously the closest front row player to the left sideline. Diagonally behind her, number 4, which is our middle front, is the next closest front row player. And 11, who is the nearest player to our first referee, is the furthest away from the left sideline of the front row players. We're good with respect to the left sideline of our front row players. Our setter, who we have circled, begins the back row order in rotation 3. 15, 12, and our libero. 15 is obviously the closest back row player to the left sideline. 12, who is diagonally behind her, is the next closest, and the libero is the furthest away from the left sideline of our back row players. We're good with our back row players. Now, let's take a look at something here. You see number 12? She's our middle back. See number 4? She's our middle front. It's obvious that number 12, which is our middle back, is probably a step and a half, maybe 2 steps closer to the net than her corresponding front row player, number 4. So by the letter of the law, guys, this is an illegal alignment. If you were to call this, you would be absolutely correct. Now, here's an issue for our first referee. Because there's not a second referee in this match, our first referee will have to look long and hard to know this, and because she has to pay attention to the server at the beckoning for server, it would be hard for her to be able to prove that they were still here illegally aligned prior to service contact if the first referee is doing her job of paying attention to the server. If R2 is present in this match, R2 should catch this very easily. So what I would recommend is, I may not call this first one, but as soon as this is over, I'm going to let the players and the coach know that this has happened, and that if it happens again, I may have to call it. And usually teams are good with that and they would be quick to fix it. But by the letter of the law, our team in rotation 3 in this particular image are not legally aligned. Let's look at rotation 4. If our setter is still on the floor when we reach rotation 4, she is our left front. And we're going to have a substitution here. 5 is going to sub in for 11. 5 will be our server. Our setter is left front. Thus, we know that our team is in rotation 4. So our question is going to be, prior to service contact, is our team in blue legally aligned? So our order of our front row in rotation 4 is 15 our setter, 16 and 4. 15, barely, is the closest front row player to the left sideline. 16 is the next closest, and 4 is the furthest away from the left sideline of the front row players. Now notice they're stacked pretty closely together, so it's very important that you are mindful of not only what rotation we're in, because that helps you know what your setter's status is, that you're mindful of their positions as well. And just a hint for later, knowledge of opposites may be helpful as well. The order of our back row in rotation 4 is 12, our libero, and 5 was our server. As long as 5 is our correct server, she's not going to factor into our alignment. 12 is the closest back row player to the left sideline, and the libero is the next closest. All that said, it's clear that our team in rotation 4, with regards to serving, are legally aligned. Let's look at rotation 4 receiving. The order of the front row in rotation 4 is 15 our setter, 16 and 4. They seemingly are right next to each other and above the attack line. And we can tell that they are legally aligned with respect to our front row players and the left sideline. The order of our back row seems to fit perfectly here. The order of our back row in rotation 4 is 12, the libero, and 5. And because they're pretty much lined up just a little space apart next to one another, we can obviously see that 12 is the closest back row player to the left sideline, followed by the libero, and ending with 5. And it's very obvious that none of our back row players are closer to the net than their corresponding front row players, because all of our back row players in this particular image are behind the attack line. All of our front row players are above the attack line. So it's clear that all our front row players are closer to the net than their corresponding back row players. On this rotation 4 for our receiving team, they are legally aligned. We're going to end this presentation by going back to rotation 5 when our team in blue is receiving. We spend a little time talking about geometry, but we're going to dive into how geometry helps us. And even though we mentioned opposites, we didn't really do a deep dive into how opposites can help us as well. So we're going to use rotation 5 for our team in blue when they're receiving to help us understand geometry and opposites. This slide should be familiar to you. This is our starting lineup of our team in blue, of all the information of everything that would happen in this set with regards to barrel placements, substitutions, and our setter. Let's remember our opposites. Left front and right back are opposites. Our two middles, middle back and middle front, are opposites. Right front, left back are opposites. How does this help us? Well, remember, alignments are the actual formations of the players on the court and where their positions are. So if I'm thinking about my libero and I know that my libero has a relationship with 7 and 16, what I do know is that my libero can never be a front row player and that her opposite should either be 7 or 16. And if I think about it from a perspective of one of the players, when they're playing a left position, my libero probably should be playing a right position. If 7 or 16 is playing a middle position, my libero should be middle back. And if 7 or 16 is playing a right front position, my libero should probably be playing a left back position. You see how that helps me greatly? I'm definitely keeping track of my setter throughout the set and the match. So I should know where my setter is at all times. So I know that the opposites for my setter are going to be 5 and 11. 5 and 11 are subbing for each other. And we remember that 5 is only playing the back row, 11 is only playing the front row. So when my setter is in middle, her opposite should be playing a middle position. If my setter is playing a right position, be a right front or right back, her opposite should be playing a left position, a left front or a left back, and so forth and so on. So you see how understanding opposites help you identify the correct positions of the players on the floor. Now let's look at this. This is rotation 5 receiving. We know our setter is middle front and rotation 5. We know this is a legal alignment. We know this. So let's give you a couple scenarios where knowing opposites would help you. See on the back row, we have our libero, who is currently left back, and number 5, who is the opposite of our setter, who is middle back. Let's just say for grins, they swap positions. This would make the libero the middle back and 5 left back. You know your opposite of your setter is 5. And if your setter's correct position is middle back, her opposite should be middle back. In this case, if they were to swap positions prior to service contact, that scenario would be illegal. Let me give you another one. Say your setter in 16, who was to her right on the front row, they were to swap places prior to service contact. This would make your setter a right front and 16 middle front. You know that your setter's opposite is 5. And since 5 is the middle back, this scenario will be illegal. What you're seeing is that having the knowledge of opposites, or at least the libero's opposite, and certainly your setter's opposite, can help you identify correct positions on the floor. And knowing correct positions on the floor by knowing opposites are a great determining factor for determining if alignments are legal or illegal. Now, how does the geometry help us? We know in this image that our team in blue and rotation 5 are legally aligned. Let's consider the same scenarios that we did on the previous slide. Libero and 5 on the back row. Swap positions. This would make your libero middle back and 5 left back. We know that the opposite for our setter is 5. That would put 5 closer to the left sideline than the libero. That's illegal. Same scenario from before for our second scenario. Our setter 15 and 16 swap places prior to service contact. This would make your setter right front and 16 middle front. We know your setter's opposite is 5. Therefore, 16 would be closer to the left sideline than our setter. And we know in rotation 5 that has to be illegal. Let's take a look at some more geometry in this presentation. You see 12, our left front. Now, again, we know that in this rotation 5, for our team in blue receiving, they're in a legal alignment. So let's just say 12 were to take a position 2 steps somewhere behind the libero prior to service contact. This would result in the left libero, who is the left back, being closer than her corresponding front row player, who would be number 12. That scenario would be illegal. You see 16, who is our right front, probably the closest player in this image to the first referee. Let's say she were to take a position 2 steps behind number 10, who is our right back, prior to service contact. This will result in number 10 being closer to the net than her corresponding right front player, who is number 16. And that scenario would also be illegal. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the basics about alignments and rotations. I will tell you that Rome was not built in a day. And your education and training and knowledge to becoming comprehension about alignments and rotations probably will not happen in a day either. For some of the best of us, and I'm talking about myself when I say this, it took several years to the point where it finally hit me one March many years ago, sitting at scorer's table as the main scorekeeper for a match, and me informing a team of an illegal server, and I looking at a score sheet, and alignments and rotations finally hit me. So the light bulb may come on for you at a different time from someone else. The best things we can recommend is to practice, 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 practice. Keep up with your setters. Know where they are at all times. Keep up with your libero. Know where they are at all times. Start small. When you become really proficient at that, add opposites of players, and then keep up with those. It starts in the warm-ups, and it starts in the lineup checks. Have fun. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. Have a great day, a great week, a great month, a great year, a great season.